They hung her in an iron cage to dying, but the rancher let her go. The small town sat quietly between wide fields and long dirt roads. Most days were slow and peaceful. People knew each other, and everyone followed the same daily routine. The mornings began with the sound of trucks starting, dogs barking, and shop doors opening. Life moved in a simple way, and very little ever changed. Not far from the town, there was a large ranch. It belonged to a man named Daniel. He was known as a hard worker who kept to himself. He was not rude, but he was not very talkative either. He preferred the company of animals and open land more than crowds of people. His days were filled with feeding livestock, fixing fences, and riding across the fields to check on things. One late afternoon, as the sun was going down and the sky turned soft orange, Daniel was riding his horse near the edge of his land. He noticed something unusual near the old road that almost no one used anymore. At first, he thought it was just some trash or an old blanket left behind. But as he got closer, he saw a person. A young woman was sitting on the ground, leaning against a broken fence post. Her clothes were dirty and torn. Her hair was messy and her face looked tired and scared. She seemed weak, like she had not eaten well for days. When she saw Daniel, she tried to stand, but her legs shook and she almost fell again. Daniel quickly got down from his horse and moved closer, slowly, so he would not scare her. He spoke in a calm voice and asked if she was hurt. The woman did not answer right away. She looked around, as if she was afraid someone else might be watching. Her eyes were full of fear and confusion. After a moment, she whispered that she was very tired and thirsty. Daniel took out his water bottle and offered it to her. She hesitated, but then carefully took a few small sips. He also gave her some food from his bag. She ate slowly, like she had not eaten properly in a long time. Daniel asked her where she came from and if she had family in town. The woman shook her head. She said very little. Her voice was soft, and every word seemed hard for her to say. It was clear that something bad had happened to her, but she did not want to talk about it. Daniel helped her up and guided her to sit on a nearby rock. He did not touch her unless necessary, and he gave her space. He could see that she did not fully trust anyone yet. Still, he felt a strong sense that he should help her. When Daniel later mentioned this to a few people in town, their reactions were strange. Some avoided his eyes. Others quickly changed the subject. A few people warned him to stay away from the matter. They said it was not his business and that asking questions could bring trouble. This only made Daniel more uneasy. He had lived in this town long enough to know when people were hiding something. The way they spoke, the way their voices dropped, and the way they looked around before answering told him that there was a story they did not want to share. He started paying closer attention. He noticed that some people seemed nervous when the woman's name or even the idea of a stranger was mentioned. Old rumors about bad luck and strange beliefs began to reach his ears. People whispered about curses and signs. Daniel did not believe in such things, but he knew fear could make people do unkind things. One evening, Daniel saw two men riding toward the hills, carrying supplies that did not look like normal farm tools. They avoided the main roads and took a hidden path. Daniel felt something was wrong. His heart told him that these movements were connected to the young woman. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He lay on his bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind outside. His thoughts kept returning to the frightened look in the woman's eyes. He remembered how weak she seemed and how carefully she had accepted help. He felt that she was in danger, even if she was not near him anymore. The next day, he rode farther than usual, pretending to check his fences. In truth, he was watching the paths and trails that led away from town. He noticed signs of recent travel, fresh tracks, disturbed dirt, and broken branches. It looked like people were going to a place that was meant to stay hidden. Daniel's chest felt tight with worry. He did not want to believe that his quiet town could be hiding something so dark. Yet, the signs were there, the silence of the people, their fear, and the strange movements all pointed to something being kept secret. He also remembered how the woman had looked over her shoulder as if she expected someone to appear at any moment. That fear did not come from nowhere. It came from experience. As days passed, Daniel tried to learn more without drawing attention to himself. He listened more than he spoke. He helped neighbors with small jobs and paid attention to their words. Sometimes he heard pieces of a story, nothing clear but enough to make him more concerned. Words like punishment, lesson, and tradition were used in low voices. Daniel did not like what he was hearing. In his heart, he believed that no tradition should ever be more important than a human life. He had seen hard times before. He had seen people make mistakes, but he had also seen how kindness could change everything. One afternoon, he rode near the edge of a wooded area where very few people went. There, he noticed a structure in the distance, partly hidden by trees and old metal sheets. From far away, it looked like some kind of storage area or old equipment yard, but something about it felt wrong. He did not go closer that day. He did not want to be seen. But the image stayed in his mind. He felt that whatever was happening, it was happening away from the town, in places where no one would easily notice. Daniel knew he was standing at the beginning of something serious. He was no hero. He was just a rancher who wanted a quiet life. But he also knew that once you see suffering, you cannot pretend it is not there. That night, he stood outside his house, looking at the stars. The land was quiet. The animals were calm. On the surface, everything looked normal, but inside him, there was a growing storm of worry and responsibility. He thought about the young woman again. He wondered where she was now. Was she safe? Was she alone? Did she still have hope? These questions would not leave his mind. Daniel made a silent promise to himself. He would not ignore what he had seen. He would not turn away just because others told him to. He would be careful, but he would also be brave in his own quiet way. He did not yet know how deep the situation truly was. He did not yet understand how much courage it would take to face what was coming. But he knew one thing clearly. Someone in that town needed help. And if no one else would stand up, then he would try. And so, with a heavy heart but a strong sense of purpose, Daniel prepared himself to learn the truth, no matter how uncomfortable or frightening it might be. This was only the beginning, and the road ahead would test everything he believed about right and wrong. After Daniel decided not to ignore what he had seen, his daily life began to change. On the outside, he still looked like the same quiet rancher. He fed his animals, repaired fences, and visited town when he needed supplies. But inside, his mind was always busy. He was watching, listening, and thinking carefully about every small detail. People in town started to act even more careful around him. Some would stop talking when he walked into a room. Others gave short answers and forced small smiles. It was clear that many people knew more than they wanted to admit. Fear had become part of their daily lives, even if they tried to hide it. Daniel noticed that a few powerful families in town seemed to control many decisions. They owned large pieces of land, ran important businesses, and had strong influence over others. When these people spoke, most of the town listened. Many were too afraid to disagree. even if they felt something was wrong. One evening, Daniel sat in a small local cafe, drinking tea and listening to conversations around him. Two older men sat at a nearby table. They spoke in low voices, but Daniel could still hear some of their words. They talked about how the problem had been handled and how things would be quiet again soon. Their voices carried relief but also worry. Daniel's hands tightened around his cup. He did not like the way they spoke, as if a human life was just a problem to be managed. He wanted to stand up and ask them directly what they meant, but he knew that would only bring attention to himself. Instead, he waited. Over the next few days, he paid close attention to small signs. He saw people carrying supplies toward the hills. He noticed wagons traveling late at night. He even saw a few people who normally stayed in town suddenly spending more time outside, near hidden paths and old roads. It became clear to Daniel that something was being kept far away from public view. Whatever it was, the town leaders did not want anyone asking questions. One afternoon, Daniel helped an older woman fix her fence. She was kind and usually talkative, but that day she seemed nervous. After a long silence, she finally spoke quietly. She said that fear had made people forget their kindness. She said that sometimes, when people are afraid, they do things they later regret. Daniel listened carefully. He did not push her to say more. He could see that even speaking that much had taken courage. That same day, Daniel rode out toward the wooded area again. This time, he went a little closer than before. He stayed hidden behind trees and tall grass. From a distance, he could see that the strange structure was not just old equipment. It looked stronger, built with heavy metal and thick bars. His heart began to beat faster. He did not know exactly what it was, but he felt sure that it was connected to everything he had been noticing. Daniel also remembered the woman he had found, her fear, her weakness, the way she had looked around, as if she expected to be taken back at any moment. The picture became clearer in his mind, and it made his stomach feel heavy. That night, Daniel lay awake again. He thought about the town's old stories and beliefs. He remembered hearing, when he was younger, about how people once blamed strangers for bad harvests, sickness, or other problems. Even though times had changed, some of those old fears still lived in people's hearts. Fear can make people forget that everyone is human. Fear can make people believe lies. Daniel understood this now more than ever. Over the next week, Daniel began to quietly prepare. He checked his tools, his supplies, and his horse, not because he planned to fight anyone, but because he wanted to be ready if someone needed help. He did not tell anyone what he was thinking. He knew that even a small mistake could put him and others in danger. One evening, while walking near the edge of town, Daniel overheard a short and tense argument between two men. One of them said that things had gone too far. The other replied that it was already decided and that there was no turning back. Those words stayed with Daniel. Gone too far. No turning back. They sounded like regret mixed with fear. Daniel began to feel the weight of what might be happening. He imagined someone being kept alone, far from help, with no one to speak for them. The thought made him feel sick. He knew that if he turned away now, he would carry that guilt for the rest of his life. He also thought about how easy it would be to pretend he knew nothing. Many people in town were doing exactly that. They went to work, laughed with neighbors, and acted as if everything was normal. It was easier to look away than to face something painful. But Daniel was not built that way. He had grown up believing that when you see something wrong, you do not stay silent. Even if you are afraid, you try to do what is right in whatever way you can. One morning, Daniel followed fresh tracks that led toward the hills. He stayed far back, moving slowly and carefully. He did not want to be seen. The path led closer to the hidden structure. From behind a group of trees, he could see people coming and going, carrying food and water, but the way they moved was not kind. It was quick and nervous, as if they wanted to get in and out as fast as possible. Daniel felt a tight pain in his chest. He was now almost certain that someone was being kept there. The thought of a person being left alone, out of sight, made his hands shake. He did not go closer. He knew that rushing in without a plan would only make things worse. Instead, he memorized the paths, the timing, and the people involved. He watched and waited. Back at his ranch, Daniel tried to act normal. He spoke to neighbors. He fixed broken gates. He smiled when needed. But inside, he felt like he was carrying a heavy secret. At night, he thought about the woman again. He imagined her sitting alone, scared and tired. He wondered if she still remembered his face, if she still had even a small bit of hope that someone would help her. Daniel told himself that hope is a powerful thing. Even in the darkest situations, a small bit of hope can keep someone going. He wanted to be that hope, even if he did not yet know how. He also thought about the people in town. Many of them were not bad people. They were afraid. Fear had pushed them into silence. Some may have even convinced themselves that what was happening was necessary. That made Daniel sad. He knew that fear can slowly change people, making them accept things they would normally never allow. As days passed, Daniel became more determined. He was careful, but his heart was firm. He knew that part one of this situation had been about discovering that something was wrong. Now, in this part of his journey, he fully understood that something very serious was happening. He was no longer just suspicious. He was sure. Daniel stood one evening at the edge of his land, looking toward the distant hills. The sky was red and gold as the sun went down. It was beautiful, but it did not bring him peace. Instead, it reminded him that time was passing, and that someone out there was still waiting. He whispered to himself that he would not let fear decide his actions. He did not know exactly what he would do yet, but he knew that doing nothing was no longer an option. With a steady breath, Daniel turned back toward his house. He would keep watching. He would keep listening. And when the right moment came, he would be ready to act. Because now, more than ever, he understood that this was not just a town secret anymore. It was a test of his character, his courage, and his belief that every life matters. As Daniel continued to watch and wait, the quiet life of his ranch began to feel very different. The same fields, the same animals, and the same sky were still there, but inside him everything had changed. His days were filled with careful thinking. His nights were filled with worry. He started to wake up earlier than usual. Before the sun rose, he would step outside, breathe in the cool air, and look toward the hills. Sometimes he felt like he could almost sense what was happening far away, even though he could not see it clearly. That feeling made his chest feel heavy. Daniel began to leave small signs for himself along the paths he traveled. He marked certain trees, noticed certain rocks, and remembered which trails were used the most. He was learning the land in a new way, not just as a rancher, but as someone trying to protect another person. One evening, while riding slowly near the wooded area, Daniel heard a soft sound that made him stop. It was not loud, but it carried through the quiet air. It sounded like someone moving, maybe shifting or struggling gently. Daniel froze. He held his breath and listened. The sound came again, faint and weak, His heart started to beat fast. He stayed hidden behind thick bushes and looked carefully in the direction of the noise. From where he stood, he could not see clearly, but he could tell that the sound was coming from near the metal structure. In that moment, Daniel felt sure someone was there. Someone was alive, and someone was being kept out of sight. That night, Daniel could not stop thinking about it. The idea that a person was so close, yet so unreachable, hurt him deeply. He imagined how lonely it must feel to be kept away from the world, with no friendly face, no kind words, and no comfort. He remembered the woman's eyes. He remembered how she had looked at him when he gave her water. That look had been more than fear. It had been a silent question. Will you help me? Daniel knew that small acts of kindness could make a big difference. Even if he could not free her yet, he could at least make sure she was not completely alone. The next night, when the area was quiet and the moon was high, Daniel carefully rode toward the hidden place. He stayed on small paths and kept his light covered. He did not want anyone to notice him. When he got close enough, he stopped and listened. The night was very still. He could hear insects and the wind in the trees. Slowly he moved closer on foot, leading his horse away to keep it quiet. From behind a tree, he could finally see part of the structure. It was made of heavy metal bars and thick walls. It looked cold and hard, nothing like a place meant for a human being. Daniel felt a deep sadness in his chest. He did not see the woman clearly, but he knew she was there. He could sense it. The space felt heavy with fear and silence. He gently placed a small bundle of food and a bottle of water near a hidden spot where he hoped she could reach it. He did not make noise. He did not speak. He just left the supplies and stepped back. As he turned to leave, he heard a very soft movement. It was not a clear voice, but it was enough to tell him that his small gift had been noticed. His eyes filled with tears, but he did not let them fall. He knew he had to stay strong. From that night on, Daniel continued this quiet routine. Every few days, when it was safe, he would bring small amounts of food and water. Sometimes he also left a small cloth or something warm. He did not want her to feel completely forgotten. He never stayed long. He did not want to be seen, but in his heart, he felt that these small acts were keeping hope alive. Daniel also began to notice changes in himself. He became more serious. He laughed less. His neighbors noticed, but he did not explain. How could he explain something that no one wanted to talk about? At night, Daniel would sit at his small table, holding his cup of tea, staring into space. He would think about how unfair life could be, how someone could be treated as if they did not matter. These thoughts made him angry, but also more determined. He also thought about what might happen if he was discovered. The powerful people in town would not be happy. They might try to stop him. They might even turn others against him. That thought scared him, but it did not stop him. Daniel believed that fear should not be stronger than kindness. He told himself this again and again. One evening, as he was leaving supplies, he heard a very soft voice for the first time. It was weak, but it was real. The woman whispered a quiet thank you. The sound of that single word touched Daniel's heart deeply. It reminded him that she was still holding on. She was still human. She was still hoping. He did not answer out loud. He was afraid that speaking might bring attention. But in his heart, he answered her. He promised silently that he would not give up on her. Over time, Daniel began to notice patterns. He learned when the guards or watchers came and went. He noticed that there were moments when the area was quieter and less watched. These moments became important in his mind. He did not yet have a full plan, but he was slowly building one. Every small detail mattered. Every quiet visit taught him something new. Daniel also started to prepare himself emotionally. He knew that when the time came, he would have to be brave. Not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a steady, careful way. The kind of bravery that comes from doing what is right, even when you are afraid. Some nights he imagined what it would be like to open that door and tell her she was free. The thought gave him strength, but it also made him careful. He did not want to rush and make a mistake. He knew that one wrong move could make her situation worse. That was the hardest part. He wanted to act, but he also had to wait. Daniel's world had become smaller and larger at the same time. Smaller, because all his thoughts were focused on one place and one person. Larger, because he now saw life in a deeper way. He saw how easy it was for people to ignore suffering and how powerful it was to choose not to. One night as he rode back to his ranch, he looked up at the stars. They were bright and endless. He thought about how small one person can feel in a big world, but he also thought about how one person's choice can change another person's life. Daniel whispered another promise to himself. He would not let her be forgotten. He would not let fear win. He would keep bringing hope, even if it was only in small, quiet ways. This part of his journey was not about big action yet. It was about patience, kindness, and building trust. It was about keeping a light on in a dark place. And deep inside, Daniel felt that the time for real action was getting closer. He could feel it in his heart. The waiting would not last forever. The morning after everything changed, the hills felt strangely quiet. The wind moved softly through the trees, and the sky was clear and bright. To anyone passing by, it looked like a normal day. But for Daniel, it felt like the beginning of a new chapter. The place that once held fear now stood empty. The cold metal structure no longer held a life inside it. The silence there felt different now. It was no longer heavy with sadness. Instead, it felt like a deep breath after a long, painful wait. Daniel stood for a moment at a distance, just looking. He did not feel proud in a loud way. He felt calm in a quiet way. His heart was full, not because he wanted praise, but because he knew he had done what his heart had been asking him to do for a long time. The woman was no longer there. She was safe, far away from the place that had held her fear. Daniel had made sure she had help, warm clothes, and a chance to begin again. He did not ask her many questions. He did not need to. What mattered most was that she now had a future. As the days passed, Daniel returned to his normal routine. He fed his animals. He repaired fences. He rode across his land like he always had. To the outside world, it looked like nothing had changed. But inside him, everything had changed. He noticed that the air felt lighter. He slept better at night. The heavy weight that had sat on his chest for so long slowly began to lift. He still thought about the woman often, but now his thoughts were filled with hope instead of fear. He imagined her walking in a new place, breathing freely, feeling safe enough to smile again. He imagined her finding small joys, like warm food, kind faces, and peaceful sleep. These thoughts brought him quiet happiness. In town, people acted as if nothing had happened. No one spoke about the hidden place. No one asked questions. It was as if the town had agreed to forget. Daniel understood why. Some people forget because it is easier than facing the truth. Some forget because they are afraid of what it says about them. But Daniel did not forget. He carried the memory as a reminder of what kindness can do. A few people in town noticed a change in him. They said he looked calmer. They said he smiled more. Daniel did not explain why. He did not need to. His peace was his own. Sometimes, when he stood outside at night, he would look at the stars and think about how close he had come to doing nothing. That thought always made him pause. He knew that if he had chosen silence, his life would look the same on the outside, but inside, he would have carried a deep regret. Instead, he carried something better. He carried the knowledge that one quiet person can make a real difference. Weeks passed. The seasons slowly began to change. The land showed signs of new growth. Small green plants pushed through the soil. Animals grew stronger. The ranch felt full of life. Daniel took these changes as a symbol. Just like the land, people can heal. Just like plants, hope can grow again, even after a long, hard time. One afternoon, Daniel received a short message through a kind traveler who had passed through a nearby area. It was simple. It said that the woman was safe and starting a new life. She was learning new skills. She was meeting kind people. She was slowly building a future for herself. Daniel read the message quietly and folded it carefully. He did not show it to anyone. He kept it in a small box in his home, along with a few other personal things. For him, it was more valuable than gold. That message brought tears to his eyes, but they were not sad tears. They were tears of relief and gratitude. He whispered a small thank you to the world, to fate, and to his own heart for not giving up. Life continued. The town remained quiet. The hidden place slowly became forgotten by most. Grass began to grow around it. Rust covered the metal. Time did what it always does. It moved forward. But Daniel never let himself forget the lesson. He became even kinder in small ways. He helped neighbors more often. He listened more carefully. He paid attention when people seemed afraid or sad. He knew now that behind many quiet faces, there can be deep stories. He also learned something important about courage. Courage is not always loud. It does not always look like big, dramatic actions. Sometimes, courage looks like bringing food in the dark. Sometimes it looks like listening when others stay silent. Sometimes it looks like choosing to care when it would be easier not to. Daniel did not see himself as a hero. He saw himself as a man who made a choice to be kind, a choice to not look away. In the quiet evenings, he would sometimes sit on his porch watching the sun go down. The sky would turn soft colors of orange and pink. The land would grow calm. In those moments, Daniel felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that not every problem in the world could be fixed by one person. He knew that pain and fear would always exist somewhere. But he also knew that his one choice had changed one life. And sometimes that is enough. The woman far away was building something new. Maybe one day she would tell her story. Maybe one day she would help someone else who felt trapped and alone. Daniel liked to believe that kindness travels forward from one heart to another. The rancher returned fully to his quiet life, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with meaning. Every fence he fixed, every animal he fed, every sunrise he watched now felt more important, because he had learned that ordinary people, living ordinary lives, can still do extraordinary things. He did not need thanks. He did not need attention. the peace in his heart, was enough. And so, while the town stayed silent, while time moved on, and while the world continued with its noise and problems, Daniel carried a quiet truth inside him. That one act of kindness done in silence had given someone a second chance at life. And for Daniel, that knowledge became the greatest reward he would ever need.